Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's Cold Chain Connect, brought to you by the Cold Chain Federation. Hope everybody is well. It's nice and sunny where you are. I've got quite a lot of sun in my face, so sorry if I'm glowing a little bit today. My name's Tom Southall. I'm the Executive Director at the Cold Chain Federation, and I'm going to be introducing today's speaker in just a moment. And I'm here to put any questions that you might have for him later on in today's webinar. For those of you who aren't aware of the Cold Chain Federation, I think most people on the call today are members of ours, but we've got a couple of new faces as well. We are the trade association for the UK's temperature controlled logistics industry. So we exist to represent the interests of businesses who either undertake temperature controlled storage, so cold storage, or run fleets of refrigerated vehicles. And you can see a selection of our storage and distribution members on the screen there. At the moment, those companies run something like 450 to 500 cold stores with over 40 million cubic meters of cold storage and run over 40,000 refrigerated trailers. The Federation provides a range of services to those members, one of which is our virtual webinar series, and that's what brings us here today with Cold Chain Connect. So great to have you with us. Just a quick one before I introduce today's speaker. We would love to hear from you. These sessions always work better when we get lots of great questions coming through from the audience. I know Tarek would be delighted to take those questions that you might have once you've heard his presentation. So you can do that by going to the panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You should see a drop-down that says questions, and you can type in your questions there. That will come through to me, and then I can put those to Tarek at the appropriate moment. If it's a clarification that you require, I might interrupt Tarek, but I'll probably wait until the end and we'll have a discussion afterwards. We've left lots of time to have a discussion following the presentation. These Connect sessions, we try to run these every week with breaks for school holidays in the summer and that kind of thing, but they cover a range of topics that we think provide our members with really interesting thought leadership and content on some of the issues they're facing within those businesses. Recently, we've had ones on renewable energy, on carbon capture, on racking, all sorts of things we aim to cover. And today is no different when we look at PPE, and perhaps a topic that is often overlooked in terms of its importance, obviously in keeping people safe as they operate in cold stores, but also in its ability to make people feel comfortable within their kind of workplace and the importance that might have in staff retention at a time when many are still struggling with recruitment in certain areas of the cold chain and in certain areas of the country. So delighted to introduce now Tarek Hayat of Goldfreeze, who is going to talk through a little bit about the journey that Goldfreeze has been on and the way that they're sort of driving standards within cold storage PPE and a little bit around that topic. So good afternoon, Tarek. I should say it's a good morning for Tarek.
It's good
this week.
Good morning.
Tarek joining us from Canada, where I think it's quite early in the morning, Tarek.
Yes, as you can probably tell by this morning face. Yes, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks ever so much for your introduction, Tom. First of all, thank you to everybody who's taken the time out of your busy day to join us for this presentation. First things first, my name is, well, first of all, tell you who my name is. I'll tell you that in a second. But I think the important thing to get straight off the bat is I'm not here to sell you any cold store products or talk about PPE. My area of interest is in kind of the psychological aspects of this, hence the name of this presentation, Shining Happy People. I'm not going to sing the REM song, so you'll be spared that. But if you can move on to the next slide, please. This is me. My name is Tarek Hayat. I'm the CEO of what is now Goldfreeze Group. We're one of the UK's biggest primary source suppliers of the products that you can see on your screen right now. So it's cold store, chill and freezer products for PPE head to toe in the cold chain. And recently we've now expanded into the European market with a headquarters in the Netherlands. So yeah, things are going great, and then we're in a good place. If you'd like to go on to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, because as I said, my main interest is kind of the psychological aspects of PPE and how that fits in with organizational culture and with HR. And a lot of this presentation is based on some work that I did for an industry publication article a couple of months back, with some quite interesting discussions around staff retention. And I think, as we all know, the cold chain is a very competitive market at the moment. It's growing exponentially. The labour market is tightening. And this is a really hot topic now in terms of being able to get the people on the ground to actually do the job, which is becoming a problem. So if I can just tell you what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the actual overall challenge, what's happening in the cold chain right now. We're then going to look at a case study, an anonymous case study for an organisation we work with in the UK. And then we're going to talk about some work we did with Argos, which kind of gives us an interesting twist, an interesting angle on it. A couple of interesting things that are going on at Goldfreeze that you might be interested in, where we're trying to add, if you like, a sort of a bit of extra value added into the cold chain through some work we've done. And then we can talk a little bit about what happens next, how we move forward, and the kind of things that we'll be looking at. So, Tom, if you'd like to move on. So, effectively, as I mentioned earlier, the main challenge, if you like, that we're facing in the cold chain, I'd say primarily number one is a tightening labour market and resource competition. I think we all know there's a lot of sheds being put up around the UK, and a lot of cold stores are being built, purely and simply because obviously there's a huge demand. Post-COVID, we're seeing a lot more of a shift towards frozen food and towards frozen items. On top of that, because of what happened with COVID, supply chains are getting longer, so inventory is increasing. And now that's been, if you like, supplemented after that through inflation and other matters that are really causing a headache for consumers, and people are trying to fill fridges and stuff as prices are going up on a month-to-month basis. So we've got a growing market and a growing opportunity in warehousing and capacity market, but a shrinking labour market. As a result of that, there's more competition for recruitment. So people are looking at things like how are we going to recruit people? The average cost to recruit someone in the UK is around £2,000. And in the cold chain, we're hearing retention rates of anything around 20 to 25% anecdotally. But actually, we've heard of some horrible stories where we're looking at retention rates of 50% or less as people within 30 days of starting. So that's £2,000 that people are never going to get back. So that's another lost person and disruption to the chain. The other specific challenge that we're looking at in the cold chain is, as labour markets are tightening, the question is, would you want to work at minus 25 degrees, or would you like to work somewhere nice and a bit warmer, maybe with some more value-added facilities such as childcare, etc. And that's where the competition has come. If you look at places in the Midlands around Northampton and Corby, etc., with all these sheds that are being built, literally people will move, colleagues will move from one place to another if their needs aren't met, or even if there's even a small differential in the cost in their hourly rates, because at the end of the day, working at minus 25 is pretty hardcore. It's pretty much like working in outer space. So people either take to it or they don't. And as a result, PPE in the cold chain is absolutely critical. So it's really important that we give colleagues the right gear, that it's the right quality, but more importantly, that it keeps them warm and it does what it needs to do. And I think part of that whole process of what's going on in the cold chain is we need to try and win some hearts and minds as we try and retain people, recruit them in the first place, hang on to them by winning their hearts and minds. And I'll go into that shortly in the next slide, please, Tom. So let's look at a case study, in fact, that we've done. We did some work about 18 months ago with the National Cold Storage and Distribution Organisation, who approached us with some specific challenges, which was a real challenge for them and actually a real challenge for us, and we really got our teeth into it. The background is it's a multi-site cold storage and distribution company. An HR led a project to improve staff retention rates. They were just hemorrhaging people. They were leaving. They did a staff survey to try and understand what's going on, and there were a number of issues that came out of the staff survey, including low morale. And one of the things that was kind of indicator of what was going on was PPE provision being poor and sporadic. So you're low morale, people were leaving, and a new management team trying to sort of reboot the business and undertake an organisational turnaround. Next slide, please, Tom. So what they discovered through the staff survey was there was no consistency in provision whatsoever. The PPE quality was perceived as poor and perhaps in some cases not up to task. There wasn't a recognised system or process to replace PPE. And in some cases, unfortunately, it came back that PPE was actually being withheld. Thanks, Tom. Can we move on to the next one, please? So in terms of what they did, we worked with them and we identified some of our products that they liked, and that we did a sort of a review of their temperature chambers and the kind of stuff that they needed. But in a way, the PPE isn't the story here. The story is that these guys actually did the work to engage with the staff and rolled out a whole load of PPE. And the key message that they wanted to get across was that we're investing in health and safety, we're listening, and that every colleague matters. And I'm really thrilled for these guys, because actually what they did after a pulse check survey, so put this teeth in, a month later, they said that people were feeling a lot happier, and that there was higher levels of staff engagement and morale. And in fact, they won a significant award in 2022 for customer care. And I think that's it. I'm not saying we're reinventing the wheel here or we're bringing world peace through PPE, but actually what I'm saying is that PPE is very much a metaphor and a good indicator of what's going on under the surface. And I think what I was really interesting and a real sort of plaudit to these guys is that they actually recognized that and did something quickly and got a quick win to get people engaged and to make people feel that there's actually something happening here that's tangible and that people felt that they're being listened to. Do you want to pass on to the next slide, please, Tom? So the next case that I'd like to talk about is Argos distribution at Basildon. So we're in the national contract holders for Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's obviously own Argos, and as a result, we started working with Argos. Now you might be thinking, what's Argos doing wearing Coldstone gear? Well, they had a heating bill. This is in 2019 of £50,000. But when they actually did some investigation into why people were still feeling cold, even though they've got these heated sheds, they realised, obviously, with the doors opening all the time, they reckon there was only a 2-degree increase in heat, in the warmth within in the ambient temperature within the warehouse, which clearly was not sustainable and costing them £50,000 a year. So what the senior team there did was they actually consulted with the union and said, look, this is costing us a lot of money, and how can we actually deal with this? And the conclusion they came to was heat the person, not the warehouse. And as a result of this, they did an exercise, they did some wearer trials with them. And what they did was the staff were given a choice and a menu system of what they could choose up to a certain value. And which grew very popular. And the feedback from colleagues was extremely positive. And again, the PPE isn't the story; it's kind of it's more what the PPE represented to the people. And they effectively are very happy with the products that they received. They felt that they had a choice in what they wore, rather than we buy this product, you will wear it. And as a result, they spent around £20,000 on PPE, but saved £30,000. And this is in 2019, before we've had the sort of utilities and energy bill increase over the last year or so. And actually, as a result, probably in real terms, they've probably saved themselves probably 150 or 200,000 in today's money. What was also interesting by the sort of engagement with colleagues was that they actually realised there's kind of a demographic going on, where they had a number of older colleagues who, many of them were in their 50s and heading towards a level of semi-retirement, part-time working, etc. One of the things that Argos thought was, well, they take on temporary workers, and of course, under employment rules, temporary colleagues have to be treated exactly the same way as full-time colleagues. And what they sort of shared with me is that the general business model in the industry was take on people pre-Christmas, and then after Christmas, let them go because they're temporary colleagues. And what they looked at was actually, how can we keep the good temporary colleagues while allowing some of the older workers to have perhaps more time off in the new year, for example, at a time when, for example, holidays are cheaper and they can get away. And actually, by hanging on to the temporary colleagues and allowing some of the older colleagues to have more flexibility, they ended up having a lot of very happy older colleagues and actually retaining a number of temporary colleagues rather than actually letting them all go and losing all the knowledge and the experience that they gained over the Christmas period. So in terms of a halo effect, by this kind of consultation with colleagues, with the unions, looking at ways of improving, actually they ended up with a sort of almost a byproduct of this, where actually the demographics came into play and they learned something new and were able to actually use that to save money on recruitment costs further by not having to recruit temporary colleagues and having all the associated costs, which again is a great win for Argos. Tom, do you want to move forward, please? So as a business, as I mentioned, we make cold store gear. I think we make some great cold store gear. It works. It's really good. But I think we try and take it a little bit further because we really want to engage with our wearers and with our customers in a slightly different way. So of course we call it our emo wear model. And basically we start with the hardware, which is the materials of the products, the functionality, certification, all the baseline stuff that everybody would expect from a primary source manufacturer, tech specs, etc. And then we kind of build in a bit of software, which is kind of comfort, warmth, flexibility. And what we try and do is build in some perceived quality. The stuff is good and it works, but we kind of want it to feel like it works and it feels like a good quality product. And that's great. But what we actually want to do is take it to the next level. And this is what we're trying to build into our products, which is an emotional response to our products. As I mentioned earlier on, people are working at -25. It's blooming cold, and they're actually very, very cold. And one of the first things that you do is that you put a garment on, you kind of almost want to hug yourself. And so we've been looking at things like materials, how soft they are, trying to use people's senses of touch and visual senses. And as a result, we're developing slowly through a number of our products a real kind of emotional engagement with our customers. And Tom, if you go on to the next slide, please. This is a really good example of one of our products that works really well. It's called our Caribou Deep Fleece. It's a fleece. There's a million fleeces that you can buy, but this one we sell a lot of because people, when they put it on, they almost feel like they're having a hug. And if you look, actually, I don't know if you can see that, but it's quite a deep pile in it, and it just feels great. So it almost feels like you're hugging your cat when you get home. So if we can elicit that in people in the working day, we're trying to make it that the sort of it's really almost difficult to explain. We always want people to have a sense of well-being in probably the toughest environment known to man, and actually have a sort of little piece of some clothing that actually they can feel emotionally engaged with. Because one of the things that we've learned, if nothing else, is people who work in cold stores know what they need and what they want. The important thing, our job as an industry, as PPE providers, all of myself and all our competitors and colleagues, is to educate people and say, look, this is out there and you can do this. And I think the important part, even just like doing seminar today, is to say that we're actually trying to build small, soft spots, if you like, where people can engage with products and just feel a little bit warmer, even if it's psychologically warmer. Can we go on to the next slide, please, Tom? Another thing that we've done, again, coming back to the case study that we've looked at and engaging with employees, is we've developed something called our Goldfreeze portal and punch out. It's an online ordering portal, but it does more than that. It kind of, you can order for across a business, across continents, across multi-sites, across within a country or even internationally, right the way down to individual level by named employee. And that's great because it's great for budgeting and all the stuff that goes with that. But actually, the really interesting part is if you name that piece of PPE for another person, Fred Bloggs, that's his jacket, that's his trousers, that's his boots. Suddenly it becomes personal. One of the things that we as human beings like is like when we talk to babies, even for example, we always like to use their name, and people that stays with us into adulthood. And hearing our name actually makes it feel very personal to us. And then at that point, we feel more engaged with the person who's talking to us and using our name. And actually, if we can say, well, that's Fred's trousers, that's his jacket, that's his boots, it just adds that sense of we care about you, we hear you, you're important. And these are the kind of things that actually matter to people. And part of our role, part of what GPAP does, I'll show you a very, very quick brief, quick video run through of what it does, is it generates reports for how much people have spent, and it tells you what's going on across the business, but also what they've not spent. And actually, if you look at things like underspend, if the budget's X and they've only spent Y, you kind of got to ask the question, what's going on, especially in this time of difficulties in recruitment. The other thing is, to make things easy, we can punch out to all major ERP systems, including Ariba, Coupa, and Workday. We're doing a big project with Aldi at the moment, which they're doing that. So those are the kind of things that we can do to make life easier for managers who are ordering products. And of course, we can discriminate as well. But let me show you a little bit about what it does. So this is GPAP. You come to a screen, you can see our products there. It's very easy to use. And again, at this point, we're still looking at things like, as if you're doing an online ordering. But actually, if you see, you can add badges, you can add names, you can personalize the products as you go through. It's really easy. And the thing is, you can also add favorite products and things like that, and also favorite products by employees. So when Fred or Joan, when their gear runs out, we can reorder for them again. So again, it just everything that kind of personalizes what's going on. This is a free portal, and we can bespoke it around your needs. So we can do it from enterprise level, which is multi-site, country, etc., right the way down to a single cold store site where we can develop solutions around that. We can put whatever products you want, we can take away whatever products you don't want. So we can really bespoke this completely around you. It's completely free. There's some spend thresholds and stuff we can talk about, but that's kind of how it works. And that gives you sort of an idea of what's going on. If anybody's interested in this, I don't want to flog this too much during this particular period, but just do get in touch. Tom, if you want to move on to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So if we just think about next steps and how we use this information and what's going on, my personal view is I think money and hours and circumstantial factors such as childcare, location, etc., are going to always be tier one in terms of colleagues, in terms of colleague management and motivators. But I would submit that PPE is a factor in recruitment and retention. And why? Because it can actually signpost intent. So a guy called McGregor, way back in the 50s, came up with X and Y theory, where X theory is employees don't want to work, they're just there because they have to be there to get the money, so we'll just not engage with them. Well, there's Y theory that suggests that people are actually motivated and engaged, and if you talk to them and treat them like human beings and are nice to them, and they'll do a good day's work for you. And I think the way as a society we're moving, and also as we're going to have to move towards to retain people, we're going to have to start engaging with our colleagues. And also the other thing is it can be a quick win at the induction process, because if people come onto site, new people from being recruited, and they see people walking around in nice uniforms, everybody's the same, everybody's wearing the same kind of PPE, that in a way makes them feel part of something, part of what's happening in the organization. And also in terms of recruitment, we can look at some of the initiatives that are going on within the cold chain right now. For example, there's an initiative going on for women in the cold chain to try and recruit more women into the cold chain, which would be absolutely brilliant. And I think anecdotally, we're beginning to see that a lot more in certainly my travels when I go around cold stores. Can you move to the next slide, please, Tom? In terms of staff retention, In this environment, as I said all the way through this presentation, PPE is more critical than any other environment anywhere, because you can't go into a freezer or a cold store wearing a jacket, a normal jacket. You have to wear PPE. What I would also urge everyone is to kind of maybe have a rethink about PPE, and don't see it as a necessary evil, but actually see it as a friend. See it as something that can actually help you in this battle to win people over to come and work in your organisation. I think engagement with staff in choice and giving them budgets and a bit of autonomy, like Argos have done, is a real winner. And actually, the feedback has been excellent. Also, anecdotally, what Argos have found is people look after their PPE even more, because actually it's specifically ordered for them. So that's been a nice win for them too. I would always urge you to invest in quality products, because it makes people feel valued, and there's almost a surprise element to, oh wow, this is really nice. These guys care about me. The other thing I would love to see, I'm not quite sure how it would work, and it's something that maybe the Cold Chain Federation and others could look at, is maybe the development of a cold store and freezer professionals pathway, where we look at things like upping the game in terms of vocational education, and actually making it an aspirational place to work. Because the guys and girls who are working in the cold chain kind of feel a bit special, that they're working in a harsh environment. There's kind of something special forces about these guys, and the ones that stay kind of have a real pride in what they do. And I'm just wondering if there's stuff that we can do to support that and actually augment it through some kind of pathway. The other thing to also say is the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. So I think what we almost need to do is kind of think differently in terms of recruitment, because it's £2,000. The person doesn't last. Why? And there's almost needs to be some research on what are the demotivating factors for the loss of staff. And I think that case study goes some way down that way. Perhaps we need some more of that, and that needs to be extrapolated. And maybe there's something we can learn from the Argos model through really quite a deep dive into what people are thinking, how it works, and then we can get this kind of double loop learning thing going on, where we try something, we come up with a concept, we try it, and then we adapt it and tweak it slightly, and then we try it again, and then adapt it and tweak it and keep trying again. And actually, you start here and you end up over here, which is great. So that's, I don't know if you can go on to the next slide, so Tom. That's us in a nutshell. I hope this is of some interest and some use to people. I'm really passionate about hanging on to staff, organisational culture and development. Those kind of my sort of more academic areas of interest. But I really think this could help us to turn the corner potentially with recruitment as part of a bigger package within the industry. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Tarek. That was fascinating. That passion you have for this topic really came through. And yeah, that message about how important PPE is for making people feel, looked after, comfortable in their jobs. It's a really important message, and we all feel it. I'm someone that goes to visit members' cold stores, and I usually get thrown the kind of visitors cold store jacket, and if it's too big and old, you feel ridiculous and you can't wait to take it off. But if it's nicely fitted and it's a new jacket, it's weird, you do instantly feel sort of almost part. Just a couple of questions. I mean, there's lots we could talk about, I think, but I'm really interested in your case studies. Really came across really clearly, and I'm sure the people on the line here, we've got lots of health and safety managers, people that I'm sure would like to provide their people with the newest and best kit, but they may have a job kind of explaining that, I guess, to the purse holders, the people who are signing off in finance departments. I mean, you covered some of this, but what would your advice be for people to convince senior managers, finance managers, that this is worth investing in?
Well, it's really interesting actually you can say that, actually. I was doing doing a presentation to another cold store company who we don't supply them. So obviously we were pitching for the business, and the cold store manager there kind of, when I got there, he pointed at me and said, "It's you, isn't it, who wrote that article?" I was like, "Yeah, it was actually." And he goes, "Do you know what happened? Do you know why you're here?" I said, "Why?" He said, because I went upstairs, talked to the management, and said we need to invest in PPE for our people. And I think this has to be driven from the bottom upwards. I think the case is there to I think there's several things. I would say those of us who supply into the chain have got reasonable products, but regardless of who they are. The issue is going to be winning the hearts and minds further up the chain to say, look, if everybody looks nice, if, like you've just mentioned, Tom, if everybody's feeling good in there, if they feel valued and they're wearing nice stuff, it's a real metaphor for who we are as a business. I actually think it's almost an existential discussion that needs to be had. Is who are we as a business? Do we care about our people? So in terms of practical steps, I would say to any health and safety manager, maybe if they want to talk to us, we'd be happy to send a few garments over free of charge for them to do some wearer trials, and maybe do some. We've got evaluation sheets and things, and say, look, these are the guys. This is how they're feeling before. This is how they're feeling after. What do you want to do? And I mean, it's a soft topic because at the end of the day, everybody's looking to save money, especially now with the cost of living, etc. But I keep coming back to £2,000 to recruit a new person, and if it only lasts 30 days, that's a very, very high level of cost.
Yeah, yeah. And well, you talked about how one of your other customers had done a survey that had actually identified that people one of the areas that they felt was important. So that's clearly a good way as well. And also this webinar, I think we are recording it, so they could just play this to their
well, yeah, they could. They
job for them. We've also talked before, Tarek. You and I have had lots of very interesting conversations, and you've joined our technical safety expert group federation. We talked about sort of sustainability in PPE. I know that's something, another way that Goldfreeze is kind of leading the industry in this way.
Sure.
It's a difficult topic, but it's something I know that you're taking forward as a business, looking at how your jackets can be recycled or made from more sustainable materials and that kind of thing.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, basically, what we've got from our point of view in terms of, so we're kind of upstream. We're trying to do everything we can to use as best sustainable materials we can. Bear in mind, this is a big, chunky lump of a product, mainly with cold store jackets. So from our point of view, we're using things like recycled polyesters. We're using, for example, a plant-based filling, etc. So we're moving rapidly. It's a journey. We're not there yet because, for example, how do you make a recyclable or recycled zip that works? I mean, that's another whole challenge because you're either metal or you're plastic, and then how are you going to recycle it? But I think the thing that kind of slightly keeps me awake at night is what happens to the product after it's finished, and that's the thing we're looking at the moment in terms of how we can recycle it downstream at the user end once it's over. And we've talked about this at the group. It's a very, very difficult subject, and we sell thousands of jackets, and I just have this sort of recurring nightmare of there being this pit somewhere where they're all full of archaeologists in 1,000 years' time finding these Goldfreeze jackets and stuff, which is slightly worrying. Yeah,
it's definitely a problem for the industry, isn't it? I know it's one.
That's an industry-wide problem. Yeah, it's a textile industry-wide problem. We're just a small part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess one of the ways you can minimize waste is ensuring that products fit. And I guess for me personally, I'm quite tall, but I'm also quite skinny, so I tend to avoid mail order clothes because they always end up not quite fit. Any advice you can provide for people who are looking at your equipment to make sure that they get the right fit for staff? Because that's part of that empowering and making things feel tailored.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Well, yes. I mean, basically, we do the usual stuff where we put sizing charts and things on, but I think there's a sizable majority out there of people who actually don't know their size because partners and others buy the clothes for them. But I think I would say our sizes are quite generous. So from our point of view, we kind of Marks and Spencerize our sizing, so they're generous. But if you're not sure, like in someone in your case, Tom, just send us the measurements of the arms and the inside legs and stuff. We can bespoke it for you. So it shouldn't be a problem. But generally speaking, if you work on that Marks and Spencer's type scenario, our large is a large, for example, and it really is. So you're getting the right fit. It shouldn't be too difficult with our products.
Brilliant, thank you, Tarek. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
We wrap up. How's it best for people to to get in touch with you and interact through the website?
Yeah, so basically you can come to www.goldfreeze.com or sales@goldfreeze.co.uk, or if you want to email me personally and tell me how poor this reservation has been, you can call me at Tarek, that's Tarek@goldfreeze.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tarek. I really appreciate you taking the time out of.
No problem. Thanks to all the viewers for taking their time out. All the very best.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, and thanks for everyone for joining. We're next back. We've got a week break, it looks like. I'm back on the 6th of June, where we're looking at solar panels. So if that's of interest, hop on the website and register for that one. I mentioned earlier, this session has been recorded. It will be up on the Federation website under Connect, and then previous webinars should be by the end of the day. So if you want to watch back, or if you've got any colleagues that you think might benefit from listening again to this webinar, then please get on there. That's it for today, and we'll see you again soon. Have a good afternoon.